Welcome, everybody, to the Women's Eco-Artist Dialogue second presentation of artist talk from our 2024 members exhibition, Lands and Symbiotic Futures. We will be speaking or listening to the thoughts of 14 artists, followed by dialogue and questions, and the presentation will end at 6:30. The third and final presentation of the artists will be on December 2nd, so we hope you can also join. A little bit about our organization, WEED. WEED was founded in 1996, and it's a volunteer-run collective of female-identified visual artists, writers, curators, art historians, researchers, scientists, and others interested in highlighting the intersection of art and ecological issues. I'm one of the co-chairs, Mary White, and joined by exhibition committee members Christina Bertia, who'd organized this primarily, and Lauren Elder. We'll start with a land acknowledgement and then introduce the artists. WEED's office stands on the territory of the Wichen, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chichoneo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County, near one of the largest shell mounds in the Bay Area. Was and continues to be of great importance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and the other familiar descendants of the Verona Band. We recognize the Muwekma Ohlone tribe, who are campaigning to become federally recognized, the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone, who are researching, revitalizing, and preserving Ramaytush Ohlone history and culture, and the Confederated Villages of Lejeune and the Segurite Land Trust, who are being quite successful in the start of returning native lands back to indigenous stewardship. Actually, a big piece of land within 8 blocks of the WEED office. So if you'd like, please add your land acknowledgements from your own locations. A little Zoom housekeeping. We're recording this presentation, and please keep your audio muted during the presentation unless you're speaking, and the hosts may mute you if there's extra noise. If you have questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat for the questions section afterwards. And think of questions for each other. So now we will introduce the artists. Jane Ingram Allen.
First.
Okay, Christina will do this. Thank you.
We'll try to get unstuck. I am stuck.
Hit the OK button and you.
What do you mean the OK button? Oh, right. I can't because it doesn't register. Mary, can you unshare me, please?
Stop making you co-host? You
just stop sharing. I can't get out. I'm not able to advance right now.
You have to unshare yourself. You need to go down and press the button that says stop share.
Okay, here's the call.
All right. The call for the exhibition was sent out to artists who were members and non-members of WEED. Human relationships with land and soils are deep and complex, sometimes based on listening and reciprocity, and sometimes scarred by exploitation and toxicity. From colonization, war, and industrial agriculture to reciprocity, stewardship, and respect, from minute microbial life to vast landscapes, lands and soils reflect choices to live in unity with and in subjugation of the natural world. WEED invites stories of land, soils, and visions for the future, both ecological and cultural. Okay, so now we'll start the presentation. Here are the list of artists going to be speaking. The first one is Jane.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jane Ingram Allen, and I'm coming to you from Santa Rosa, California. My piece in this exhibition is called Living Leaf for Pepperwood Preserve. And it was the result of getting a grant from Creative Sonoma for their Art Surround program. And I was partnered with Pepperwood Preserve, which is a big land preserve in Santa Rosa, California. And so my work is in the shape of a giant pepperwood tree leaf. This preserve is named after the pepperwood tree, and it's most known for its spicy flavoring. And it's important in Native American culture and cuisine, as well as in woodworking and other medicinal uses. So I decided to make my sculpture installation work in the shape of the pepperwood leaf. And the colors I used in it are also remind you of pepper and the colors of the native grasses. This work is using handmade paper that I made from natural fibers, and the paper pulp contains seeds for 3 different native grasses that are common at Pepperwood. And the seeds were also collected at Pepperwood Preserve. And the making of this was first, working with the soil directly as a partner in the installation and allowing the handmade paper to dissolve into compost and nourish the soil, and the seeds in the handmade paper to sprout and grow into a bed of native grasses. And my idea with this was to work in a symbiotic relationship with nature and let whatever happens with the rain and the sun. So it was installed in the late November, early December. And in Northern California, we have rains in the winter. It sprouted and grew throughout the spring. And the idea was for it to
10 seconds remaining. She heard
Okay. Thank you.
it.
Next up is Mary Babcock.
I will be reading Mary's statement since she is not able to attend this evening. Much research is currently being done to better understand the Ohia Lehua's vulnerability in the face of rapidly changing climatic conditions and human-induced changes to its environment. Recent research using aerial photography and optical remote sensing suggests that a major vector in the spread of ROD is the presence of ungulates, hoofed animals, who are foreigners to native forests. Barrier fencing appears to halt its spread. This piece, constructed from household wax paper, a material that is intended to preserve, yet is itself fragile and impermanent, references such aerial maps and explores the dual edge of human intervention. And that's the end of her statement.
I'm happy to be proven wrong about my interpretation of the work. I'm really glad that that narrative could come to everyone. So yeah, strike what I said.
Thank you so much for sharing, though. It's nice to have different insight.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Okay, carry on.
next is Sarah Bachinger, who is not here, I think, right?
Correct.
So
Okay.
we'll just keep going.
Lorraine Bonner.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank Weed for this opportunity. This is great. In the beginning, the goddess gave birth to the universe. This was 13.7 billion years ago. At first, there were only quarks, but in time, the quarks began to find partners, and after a while, hydrogen evolved and gravitated into stars. The gravid stars swelled up. Can you hear me? No.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, can you still?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The gravid stars swelled up and created elements like iron and oxygen and carbon, and birthing them into billowing clouds out into the universe. Our solar system began to form about 4.5 billion years ago, and there appears to have been water on our planet even as early as 4.4 billion years ago. Like the universe, the origin of life on Earth is a mystery. Perhaps drops of milk from the breasts of the goddess as she moves among the star nurseries. There is clear fossil evidence of life by about 3.5 billion years ago. Although oxygen is the most abundant element on our planet, there was no free oxygen in the atmosphere at this time. The earliest organisms sustained themselves with metabolic processes such as fermentation, which generated methane. This worked well then and is still operating today as climate change thaws out the permafrost for methane-producing bacteria to wake up and get going. But the system was too stinky and the goddess wanted the earth to smell better. She picked out a bacteria in her favorite color, blue, and led it to the sunlight. She whispered the magic word chlorophyll, and green seeped into the blue, and the blue bacteria became blue-green bacteria, cyanobacteria, a new being. Photosynthesis took off. It was vastly more efficient at generating metabolically useful energy than anything that had come before. But there were two problems. For one, oxygen likes to bond with or oxidize many other elements and molecules, including organic molecules. In the beginning, no one had evolved antioxidants, not even the cyanobacteria which were producing it. Photosynthesis was responsible for the first mass extinction event. The second big problem was that the photosynthetic organisms were pulling a lot of the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and the oxygen they were producing converted the methane, a strong greenhouse gas, into carbon dioxide, a weaker one. With less carbon dioxide and methane, the greenhouse Earth became snowball Earth. Time went by, and about 2.2 billion years ago, in one of the great events of communal living, a small bacteria entered a larger cell and became a mitochondria. And a few 100 million years later, a cyanobacteria entered another cell and became a chloroplast, partner to the first plant.
Lorraine, can you find a way to bring us up to the current time?
Plants, we have plants now. That is now. Did I leave too much time at the end? I was trying so hard to get to 3 minutes.
Sorry to do that to you.
Okay, we're gonna move on. Thank you.
Okay.
Bonnie Borucki.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that, Lorraine, and yay for plants. And everybody that's helping with this exhibit, I'm really honored to be here. So anyway, the land I'm connected to is very urban. It's in the middle of the Bay Area. It's a very densely populated transportation corridor. And this specific piece showing here, it's located at Urban or Eco Park in Berkeley, California, which is basically a salvage yard for commercial and residential reusable stuff, a great alternative to Home Depot. So I've been the plant caretaker there for about 5 years. And then during the pandemic, I had the inspiration to create these mini murals on the large circular parking lot planters. So I started with the local pollinators and native plants. And then I extended that on to illustrate a map of the culverted creeks that were once there, now under concrete. And then the abundant flora and fauna that was there before the land was colonized and industrialized. So also during the pandemic, there were a lot of free Zoom classes going on, and I learned a lot about and had the opportunity to see some of the presentations from Elaine Ingram, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, about the soil food web. I had a layperson's knowledge of composting, decomposing organisms, and soil nutrition, but learning how critical these microorganisms are to our soil and planetary health was eye-opening. So I decided to pay homage to these organisms, the microfauna, macrofauna, and this one is the mesofauna, or the mid-sized soil organisms. So this outdoor exhibit, it's not set in a very peaceful, reflective space, but it's seen by hundreds and maybe thousands of people 7 days a week. So my hope is when some people come to find their old bathtub upholstery material, that they may be curious about what's on the planters and the largely invisible world that's lost in our day-to-day moving about. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now Carolyn Borucki.
Hello, I'm Caroline, and I am from the Chicago area, currently in Iceland for a residency. So hello. And this piece is Rhizobium leguminoserum. And this is named after the actual scientific classification of a bacterium species. And it's an endophytic bacterium that has a symbiotic relationship with legume crops primarily. Endophytic means a mutual relationship with a bacterium or a fungus and a plant, which doesn't cause disease. So as opposed to something that's parasitic and, takes control of a plant. Rhizobium leguminoserum is beneficial to legume crops because they are nodules that develop on the roots and they transform atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia, which is a process that lowers the need for synthetic fertilizer. This process allows the plant to stimulate growth and flourish, and this is clearly a positive thing because it's a natural solution to chemicals in fertilizers. And it's something that needs more attention drawn to it for farming and gardening. This alternative solution is mutually beneficial relationship, and it allows for growth and safety for the plant to thrive. My work oftentimes has to do with empathy being expressed through nature, as well as bringing attention to underappreciated life forms or materials in this world. And I found this to really fit into the criteria. When I started my work, I began making a foundation with this sculpture, and I started with soft fabric, which was this insulation layer that was on an ironing board from my grandmother. And I suppose that I have a connection to that fabric because it has this comfort and protection associated with it because it was hers. I gathered sections of the fabric with thread to create tension, as well as leaving parts that were open so that I could add to it later on with more materials. This beginning process of creating the foundation is very intuitive. And once I complete that, then I started to research and see what does this resemble, what kind of plant or what kind of form in nature. And that's when I found out about Rhizobium leguminoserum, and the story really drew in my attention. So I wanted to focus on that. Because just like, and with this piece, I think of it as an evolution of what already exists, because just like in science and in life, things evolve and change. And this is kind of my idea of what it could be in the future. I have wisps of linen on it that reference connections to roots. And I also have another community of things growing on part of it because this nodule benefits the plant in a way that is helping it survive.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Next, we have Catherine Daley.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Catherine Daley. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to present. I'm very impressed with everyone and their artwork. It's really amazing. So I live in Windsor and I am in Sonoma County. The bronze piece you see in front of me was cast from an iconic tree in Pepperwood Preserve, which was lost during the horrific fires, the Tubbs fires, 2017. And I went back after the devastation. I was hoping to see a few trees still there. Some of them did survive. This one did not. But I had this thought of taking the wood and casting it in bronze, not doing a full burnout. So if you don't know bronze casting, what you do is you encase the whole thing in a ceramic shell, you put it in a kiln and you bake it. Usually you burn everything out. This time I chose to leave most of it in. And I also chose to leave the ceramic shell on it, which creates more of that texture and bark-like quality to it. The patina I chose was based on the idea of showing some of the lichen and other life forms that would normally be associated with this tree. In addition to that, this tree, the piece that I selected, it had sudden oak death. It has the little blisters on the outside, which I can't think of the name, what you call those. But anyway, those are also preserved in the bronze. My thought in doing all of this was that I wanted to preserve the tree as in a sense, a memorial, and also similar to how people will often bronze something that's very precious to them so that they can look back and remember it. I feel like choosing this, I was trying to preserve the essence or the spirit of the tree for us to see and remember, enjoy, but also leaving some of the actual part of the tree inside. And I chose the base, which is a black granite, because this black granite is actually very hard to get now. It's almost impossible because it's all been mined out. So it was a little bit of a balancing of trying to preserve something, at the same time making a nod towards what we're losing. I'm happy to report, this was from Pepperwood Preserve. I think I said that earlier, that they're at the forefront of studying climate change. They're also a member of 30 by 30, and they have a native council who advises them on better land management. So my thought on this whole piece was to have people think about these important issues so that we do have trees in our future lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Elkovich.
Hi, everyone. Again, I want to also thank everyone at Weed for the great work on the exhibition, and I'm happy to be part of it. So recently I learned the Scottish Gaelic word duchas, and it refers to land, heritage, and stewardship. So it's not just where you come from, has to do with the responsibilities we have in caring for the land in our communities in harmony with nature. So the concept struck a chord with me because it kind of mirrors the essence of my practice as an artist. And I encountered the word duchas during my research as a distinguished Fulbright scholar in Scotland. And after a DNA analysis revealed my bone-deep ancestral ties to Scotland, I traveled there to connect with the places where my maternal ancestors once worked the land as sheep crofters and weavers. So to chronicle the journey, I captured fleeting images of the Highlands and translated them into tapestries. And I immersed myself in traditional weaving techniques, but I also explored modern methods, creating large-scale and machine-fabricated works enhanced by the slow work of hand embroidery. And so this piece is part of my Motherland series, and it reflects the tension between mechanization and tradition. Between the timelessness of rocks and soil and sea, our traditional textile crafts, and their connection to land, in contrast to the disconnection of a tech-driven world. I'm reminded of Robert McFarlane's words in his book Underland, where he observes, "I realize how configured my sense of distance has become from living so much on the internet, where everything is in reach and nothing is within touch." This sentiment encapsulates the disconnection I sought to bridge by embracing Ducasse as a guiding principle. And through this lens, I strive to work with intention and respect, honoring heritage, balancing tradition with innovation, and staying deeply connected to land and community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy Gesimondo?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Nancy Gesimondo. I'm a mixed media, interdisciplinary mixed media artist in New York City. The land acknowledgement is the Lenape tribe. And the work, well, first of all, thank you everyone at Weed for the opportunity and for using my image as the lead-in for tonight's presentation. It's a photograph from a series called Portals that was made possible in part with public funds from the 2023 Queen's Art Fund, a re-grant program supported by the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs and administered by the New York Foundation for the Arts. So the project Portals was a series of photographs taken from two rather inhospitable locations on opposite ends of the country. This particular image is from the Salton Sea, and I will discuss that. The other area was Dead Horse Bay on the Rockaway Peninsula in New York, which is like a nickname Bottle Beach because it's on a leaking landfill, and there's all these bottles that are emerging, vintage bottles from like the 40s, 50s, and it's pretty horrific. But if you want to go to my Instagram, you can see some of those images, and it's just my name on Instagram. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Salton Sea, being California residents. I would imagine Salton Sea has a very tragically austere beauty, but it's also very noxious. Immediately upon arriving, I could taste the air as it burned my throat, and afterwards I was anxious to wash the toxic dust from my feet. The Salton Sea is referred to as the Riviera of Palm Springs, and it's best known now for being California's worst ecological disaster. The damming of the Colorado River for its agricultural purposes caused the water to recede, forming a dry, barren-looking lake bed alongside mass die-offs of fish from the high salinity of the water. The exposed lake bed has already created poor air quality in the Imperial County, and many children throughout the area suffer high rates of asthma. If the lake were to vanish completely, plumes of toxic dust particles could render the surrounding parts of the Coachella Valley and Mexico uninhabitable. The area is really quite remarkable. It's really like being on another planet that sort of post-apocalyptic or something. I don't know if you're all familiar with Bombay Beach, which is very surreal backdrop, and artists often go there to create outdoor sculpture installations that attract visitors from all over. The Salton Sea now has the largest reserve of geothermal brine deposits in the world, making it a potential resource for direct lithium extraction, which is currently underway. As companies are trying to access how to extract lithium from deep underneath the lake, but this is a very costly and complicated endeavor that will take decades to realize. The water consumption for a large-scale mining project is a major prohibiting factor, as the Colorado River is also dwindling. If this project comes to fruition, it's estimated that tax revenue from lithium production could be as high as $30 million a year. So that's a little bit of background, and in the image itself, I hold a reflective mirror to the sea, sort of, and I'm really standing on this land that has, you know, it's covered with barnacles and fish bones, and it was once underwater, and you can see all the dead branches and leftover trees, and your feet sort of sink into the earth in certain spots as well, and it's really quite noxious and incredible. So that's
Thank
really
you,
all
Nancy.
I have to
We're
say.
at time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kristie Hansen.
Hi, I'm Kristie. I live in San Francisco. I'm a conceptual sculptor. Thanks for having me, Weed. So this piece, Revolution 1, was created in 2019. My revolution symbolized the interconnectedness of all earthly beings and the cycle of life. They are a continuation of my Connect series, which express the quiet, essential symbiotic relationship with our living, breathing planet that is complicated by our government's apathy regarding the destruction of its resources and our natural world. Through these works, I put my energy into bringing life back to the branches, just as I optimistically believe nature will heal and put itself back together. I am drawn to geometric shapes in nature. I am drawn to nature. I am drawn to like-minded people. In a forest in Sonoma County, which had been logged for its redwoods, I had been removing the invasive Scotch broom, and I started noticing the roundish branches that I realized came from these weeds. Eventually, I found many dead, overgrown ones that had grown so tall they uprooted themselves and curved naturally as they fell over with their own weight and dried out. As I worked on this series, I secured these branches with recycled belts fashioned from organic materials, mostly leather, and these particular belts, consisting of 2 layers stitched together, served as channels for nesting within. I prefer a natural connection in my sculptures. Every living thing serves a purpose, even when we do not know what that may be. And this weed, Scotch broom, fixes nitrogen and helps with erosion control. As I continued to work on this series, in 2020, wildfires burned like a revolt, transforming the landscape. Wildfires have since burned through the land where these were collected, and soon after, new life sprouted. Yeah, this was the Walbridge fire, not far from Windsor and Santa Rosa there too. So the weeds that were incinerated in the fires later made the land green when they returned, rejuvenating the forests. This gave me hope. At the same time, revolution was in the air with countless protests against police killings and the resurgence of Black Lives Matter. All this activism was a light of hope amidst the darkness. I had been participating in many protests since there seemed to be so much divisiveness in this country at this time, especially in regards to protecting sacred lands from corporate interests, Dakota Pipeline, anyone, fracking. I also had carried a protest fetish to carry with me as a sign, a symbol of the voiceless, how Mother Earth cannot speak for herself. Sure, maybe I was diluting the message, but I was there to represent beyond myself. I feel urgent climate action is needed. The environment is deteriorating rapidly, and our future depends on the decisions made today. We must stand up, speak out, and demand change. Our unified voices and actions can drive the revolution needed to protect our planet. We are all part of a whole, and we are all connected. Thank you. Sorry, I had to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rhonda Janke.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Janke, and I currently live in Kansas. And the land acknowledgement is, this is the home of the Kaw Nation and the traditional Osage people here. The piece on the right is called Soil Health Index, and I created that one in Kansas in collaboration with soil, with organisms, and with my students. I'm teaching an organic farming course and trying to explain to students, you know, what do we mean by soil quality? What do we mean by soil health? And so in true scientific spirit, the piece of cloth at the top, the white piece, is unburied cotton canvas that artists might use to paint on. And then as you go down vertically, We have different potting soil mixes, perlite, vermiculite, peat moss, and then the final one at the bottom is vermicompost. So the last three are different types of compost. As you can see, there's a lot more decomposition when you let the organisms do what they're supposed to do, and enhance the soil. At the same time that I had this piece going, it was 30 days in a little pots in a greenhouse. My students were conducting experiments where I asked them to bring in good soil, bad soil, and they were using plants as indicators as well as the buried cloth as an indicator. So this is sort of a art science crossover piece where I'm also using it as a teaching tool. The piece on the left I did in Oman, also with my organic farming students. And I lived in the country of Oman for 8 years and just returned recently. And interestingly, Oman, the people who live in Oman are from Oman. It was only for a brief couple hundred years taken over by the Portuguese in the 1500s. Yesterday was Oman's National Day, so they've continued to celebrate their independence. And the students in my class took these pieces of fabric, and again, I asked them to bury it in, instead of pots, we went out to the field and they took it home and buried it on their home farms. And some of these farms have been farmed since the beginning of agriculture in Oman. So thousands of years, potentially thousands of years. And you can see again, different amounts of decomposition in the cloth. And if you're able to zoom in on it, when you look at the piece, you'll see the patterns that the microbes left in the cloth. The design I used to quilt this piece, I got the idea from Bedouin weaving patterns. In Oman, there are still Bedouin living in Oman, as well as their weavings are sold in the lobbies of five-star hotels. And so you're surrounded by sort of both ancient and modern at the same time. And so I would say this piece is an example of my attempts to collaborate with soil, with microbes, with students, and then also with history or over time. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much. And next we have Kate.
Hello, my name is Kate Kuaimoku. I'm an interdisciplinary visual artist, and for the work that I submitted for the exhibition is a video. It's a video performance piece entitled "The Tie That Binds." In this piece, I present my first film, which is an exploration of entrapment and the merging of human and non-human entities, drawing inspiration from the captive Rapunzel and the weaver Akrine in Greek mythology. In contemporary world building, I'm interested in how we interact with nature through the creation of new myth. The work is set in a deserted space, a liminal space that shifts between the reality of gravity and earth. These two spaces expand upon the ideas of what one is tied to. For the character, the rope extends and integrates itself into her follicles. This experience of being entangled and desire to not to be consumed is a commentary about our fate and the way in which we should think about how our destinies are and can be written. I'm gonna speak to the storyline in the video. It begins with a knot. From this knot was woven fibers intertwined from blades of bark, skimmed from Corcoreus colatorius, a native jute after it's been broken and rippled. Each strand of fiber was long, soft, and shown. This natural fiber, now after its twisting and contorting itself into a knot, found its way to a host. And this is how she found herself playing the principal role. It took a hold and began to slowly down the nape of her neck. Frustrated by the grip that could not be lessened, she sought after answers. If the earth is woman, then the woman is inhabited with the same obscure forces as the earth. If communal property has always been transferred through women, then land can be considered as mystically belonging to women. Does the tie that binds them stronger than ownership? With time, the strands had now elongated weather and wiry. They began to crack. Heavy became the burden, the honest that became the tonnage that seemed to never lessen. Heavier and heavier now the failure. At last, cut. Thank you.
Next, we have Emily Van Engel.
Good evening. My name is Emily Van Engel, and I'm zooming in from Santa Fe, New Mexico. I have a watercolor in the show called What If There Were No Sacrifice Zones? I'd like to share a little bit about the colors and the words tonight. So the words say, what if there were no sacrifice zones? Sacrifice zones are areas where there's a buildup of land, water, or air pollution, the byproduct of industrialization. When I made this piece in 2022, I was trying to imagine what it would feel like if we just didn't have that, if the ways that we made products and lived our lives just didn't involve any pollution and every place was safe to live in. This painting is part of a series that I started during the 2020 COVID lockdown, where I was trying to imagine and feel into the kind of future that I wanted. My starting point came through color. I identified colors to represent how I want to feel about different elements of my life. For example, health is lavender, and that represents the peace that I want to feel around my own health. Gray represents ecological policies that feel well considered. Brown is how I want to feel about a healed earth. Indigo blue connects me to the dignity I feel about racial justice, and so on. The colors are a way for me to connect to these feelings, and I painted abstractly in ways that felt satisfying and playful. So the composition is not meant to look like anything in particular, although it ends up kind of looking landscapey. My hope with this painting and in the body of work in general is to offer a peaceful and inclusive way to discuss ecological problems. I feel like we've gotten to this place where things feel scary and destabilizing, but I'm hoping my paintings could open conversations around what we do want and what could be possible, and to imagine what a world could look like or feel like that is clean and safe for everyone. When I made the piece, I was reaching for something positive, and now that I look back on it a few years later, I can see some darkness and depth in it that I wasn't really acknowledging when I first made it. I think these moodier aspects of the painting reflect my own anger around environmental disasters and my worry around not being able to solve some of the problems that have been put into motion. I imagine that people who see the painting will be coming from different places with their personal relationship to climate crisis and with abstract art. But I hope that my work inspires some reflection or curiosity about sacrifice zones, why we have them, and imagining what a world would look like if we didn't have them.
Thank you very much. And now Michelle Waters.
Okay. I'm Michelle Waters. I'm speaking to you from unceded Awaswas land, which now is called the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I'm near Monterey Bay in Central California. And thinking about this piece, I was thinking about a quote that I really like, and it's from Shakespeare. It's from Julius Caesar, and I don't think it was intended by him to be about what we do to the earth back then. Maybe it was, I don't know, but it feels like a poignant and apt description of Western civilization's effect on the planet. Pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth, that I am meek and gentle with these butchers. I think those are words to reflect on. So thank you to Weed and to the jurors for including my work in this exhibit. This painting is called Manifest Destiny. It's actually an older piece. I created it back in 2003 as really the first inspiration was a response to the ramping up of oil and natural gas production by the George W. Bush administration. At that time, my husband and I went on a road trip to southeastern Utah, which is just a wonderful area of the country that we love. And it's full of Native American rock art and biodiversity, and also mineral and mineral mining, and it used to have uranium mining and also natural gas thumper trucks, which can damage the rock art and the biodiversity. So that was the first inspiration, and then of course the Iraq War, and really just our culture's insatiable appetite for squeezing all value from the land without regard for the other organisms who are dependent on it for survival, or without regard for the future. We are very short-sighted in our culture. And in one sense, this painting is a science fiction piece, with masses of construction equipment coming in from outer space to invade and chew up the planet. But in another sense, I see this painting as being really realistic, because this is what it feels like to me. This is what capitalism feels like to me. What it feels like to witness, in my 60 years, what Western capitalist culture is doing to our beautiful planet. It's just, and I also wanted to mention the George W. Bush administration, because I have seen and heard people say things like, "Oh, Trump makes me wish that George W. Bush was back," and I don't feel that way. Um, I think the problems we have greatly predate Trump, and that doesn't minimize the damage that he has done and will do. But I think it's important to think about. This painting is also, it's part of a series of large pieces I did in that time frame in the early to mid 2000s that confront the human assumption of superiority over the natural world, over our land, over the animals, over wildlife, over native plants. And in addition to being a painter, I'm also an environmental activist, and I focus on habitat. Our culture largely denies the sacredness of the earth and denies that we humans are part of the earth and dependent on it. We're always trying to control nature, and we are seeing more and more that we are unable to do so. I really believe that our disconnection from nature is the biggest root of our environmental crises, and I think that creating art about it is cultural resistance to ecocide. Thank you.
Excellent. Last words, excellent. Okay, so we're going to proceed to our discussion, but just a reminder, we will have the third of the artist presentations coming up on Monday, December 2nd. So watch for that. And thank you.
If you'd like to put you can either raise your hand and we'll try to speak to it, or you can put your hand in the raise hand section. We'll try to spot everybody. Okay, Nancy has her hand up.
Hi again. I was very interested in Kate's work, and I was curious where we can see the full video, The Tie That Binds.
I believe it's still in the Kunst Matrix. If you go online there, I can also just share the Vimeo link. It's open to everyone, but I can share that.
Thank you.
My understanding is that the video is on our Kunstmatrix site. If it's not working, let us know.
Thank you.
Okay, Catherine has her hand up.
Yeah, I'm very interested in Lorraine's artwork because of her history. I mean, obviously it sounds like Lorraine. I would love to know more about you. Wait, did Lorraine leave? Oh, there you are. Good. Oh, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, unmute.
Okay, good. Yeah, the phone is a lot less user-friendly in terms of doing things like muting and unmuting. I'm not sure what is it that you would like to know more about?
I just wanted to know more about your experience because of your narration of the evolution of chlorophyll and how it arose, and then also infusing it with a goddess. I was very interested in that, and I found it scientific and yet playful at a time. And often I find that science is best understood when it is playful, in my opinion, because sometimes it's just separated out from the arts. But I'm very interested in where your areas of expertise arise from.
I don't think of myself as being an expert in pretty much anything. I did a lot of just sort of looked into this stuff, but I'm totally fascinated by the evolution of the earth, the evolution of life. I think a lot about the likelihood of our extinction, and so I have been looking a lot at other extinction events, and I'm not sure we should try and not go extinct, because I mean, I think about, well, how does it happen that these bad things are happening? How did it happen that we ended up with capitalism, and when there's so many other ways that human beings have organized their lives? And
yeah,
so yeah, I guess I just have a lot of curiosity about a lot of things, and I have a lot of trauma stuff that I'm working through, which gives me a perspective about how we have become disconnected from the sacredness of everything, of one another, of the earth, of everything. So I don't know if that answers your question.
yeah. Actually, I feel similarly. I mean, it's like I muse on how science has been separated from the arts, and when did that happen, and why did it happen? Because they used to be integrated. If you think about a lot of the renowned artists, they also were scientists. And and now art has been ripped and devalued and made it as not as important. I'm wondering what's going to happen to our Department of Education. Oh,
Yeah, I think a lot of look at the Enlightenment is when a lot of that happened, when suddenly it was all about reason and nothing about the heart. And I do have a background in science. So I was originally a scientist, and then got off into other things. So yeah, right there with you.
yeah.
Okay, Kristie Hansen has her hand up.
Sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, it took me a moment there. Okay, first of all, I just thought it was really fabulous that Catherine and Jane, you both had a Pepperwood Preserve connection there. That was pretty fabulous. I'm very interested in that. Is that, I assume that's in Sonoma County?
It is, yeah. Pepperwood Preserve is in between Calistoga and Santa Rosa.
Okay.
Jane, what do you want to say about Pepperwood? I don't want to take up all the airspace.
Yeah, it's a wonderful space. It's beautiful, and it is a preserved space.
And it's open to the public?
Sort of. You have to actually make an appointment to go there. And it is a preserve. So they are preserving the land. They're also using it for educational purposes.
Great. One other little question, which is Emily, are you, the colors, do you have synesthesia? Is that how I say it? Synesthesia? Gosh, I don't know how to say that.
No, I don't know what that is. Could you define it?
I'd say like when colors have like maybe oh gosh, I like looked it up because I couldn't think of the word, but like sometimes colors have feelings or even names or personalities, things like that too. I mean, it sounds like there's something going on with that.
I don't relate to that. I just love color, and like my palette of watercolors is just so gem-like to me. I just love it so much, and I wanted to like dive in and like assign some meaning to it. I think when you're working abstractly, you have to have some kind of like parameter for the work. So for me, I chose color as a way to start.
Emily, did you have your hand up as well?
Yeah, I had a question for Carol. I was intrigued by, I might be pronouncing this wrong, the ducas, is that the Scottish word for land stewardship? I was curious if you noticed any of that happening, like what are those practices? Or if it's more of like something from the past that you're hoping to see more of in the present.
I did see a lot of those practices. It's an interesting word because Scottish Gaelic is almost extinct. It was one of the languages that was really suppressed by the colonialism there, but it's coming back and it's still spoken on the Isle of Harris in Lewis. And in particular, I saw so many textile artists, especially, that were really connected to the land and the care of it. And, they're connected to some of the sheep farming, but there were these communities that were very much these rural spaces where people were making their living from the land, and they were making their living from the wool and dyeing wool with natural materials. And it was actually really inspiring to see how many people were working still in these craft fields, but also the farmers and some of the even estate owners that I met were working towards shifting to wind power. The oil industry in the north, the North Sea oil is a lot of people made their living from that and still do, but I saw a lot more waves of wind power and people harvesting things from the sea, not so much the fishing, because the fishing was very much international, kind of people coming and taking the fish, but there were people harvesting like seaweed and things. And so a lot of the rural environments were very much respected art, and they were really tight communities, especially on the islands. And the islands themselves, there had to be a lot of sustainable thinking because resources are limited there. And so I found it super inspiring to be there. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. And I did have a question. My hand was raised, but I don't know if I'm in the right order here.
Oh, yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay, this was for Carolyn. And first of all, geez, what time is it in Iceland?
Currently, I think it's 2 a.m.
That's what I thought. And I just wanted to point that out. So yay
Yeah.
for you for showing up. Yeah, I remember the 9-hour time difference in Scotland.
Yeah.
When I was there
yeah.
for 6 months, it was crazy because I'm in California. So for me, it was 9 hours.
Ah.
But I wondered if you work with scientists, you seem to have this scientific understanding of the legume bacteria, and stuff. And I wondered if you're doing something around that type of research in Iceland right now.
I haven't worked too much with scientists. I did when I was in graduate school. I had one of my mentors was she had her PhD in botany. And so I was able to work with her and get a good understanding of things. I do like to do like these micro focuses, and just, it starts by me creating something and then doing research myself. But yeah, here in Iceland though, I've been learning a ton about like what you were talking about with like sheep and wool. I mean, I've been doing that here. So we've been working a lot with wool and farmers and seeing every process that, the wool goes through and where all the sheep go. And it's been really amazing learning about the culture here. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Lorraine, you have another question?
Yeah, I already had a question. I just answered another question, but I had a question.
Okay.
Which also to Caroline, about the legumes. It was very interesting. I was amazed at your piece, the creation in fabric of the leguminous bacteria. And it made me, of course, think about the the way that Native people in North America have used the legumes in the form of the Three Sisters, that the corn grows with the beans, and the beans help replenish the nitrogen that the corn uses. In addition to that, there was an African American scientist who recognized the importance of legumes, named George Washington Carver, who replenished much of southern soil using peanuts. And so those are important, I think, connections to the leguminous bacteria. I try and practice growing some beans like that, particularly fava beans, which I use as a cover crop also. But the problem is that in order to retain the nitrogen that's fixed in the soil, you have to not allow the plant to go to seed. You can't let it make beans because it'll transfer all of that nitrogen out of the soil and into the bean, which you get to, but it doesn't do your soil any good. There's always a little bit of a, contradiction there that has to be thought out on each in each circumstance. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. That's really lovely feedback to hear
Mm-hmm.
for the research too, Thanks.
I have to figure out how to lower my hand.
Okay, Bonnie Borucki has her hand up.
I'm trying to undo my mic. Hi, yes, I have a question for Rhonda. Yeah, I really like the way that you were having the microorganisms as the painters, as the artists, creating these pieces. And I wondered if your students were, they noticed the different patterns that were created in the different pieces of cloth put into the soil.
Yeah, some got into it more than others, and some of my students also have interest in art, so they were interested in those patterns. One student I remember went so far as to bury her cloth with some herb tea, and so she got some neat colors in the cloth from the dye from the tea, that I think it was a hibiscus tea, as well as from the soil microbes. And then if you do repeated iterations of this and bury cloth at different times, you can play around with, sometimes I fold the cloth and tie it, sometimes I sort of fan fold it, sometimes I like starburst fold it. You can get different patterns with different folding designs, but then you just let the microbes do their thing. And then recently I've started experimenting with adding things to the cloth that the microbes might like to eat. And at first I was just adding sugar water, and they didn't do much with that. But then I started adding a solution of sugar, milk, and flour. And I think the milk used almond milk one time, and they really went for that. So now I'm looking at ways to create designs in the cloth by adding sort of my painted either words or patterns, and then let the microbes do their patterns.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I'd like to see close-ups of some of the pieces.
Yeah, it's hard to see on the on the website with the resolution. It depends on what resolution you got.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Carol Elkovich has her hand raised.
Yep. Kristie, I was going to ask you a question. I was struck by what you said about your work, the abstraction of the sculpture. I really appreciated. I like that kind of thing for sure. There was something about the sort of spiral and circles that, and then the fact that you're using Scotch broom, that was reminding me of some of the travels that I had, where in Scotland it's covered in broom, but they just call it broom because it's native to there. But then also I saw so many sort of Pictish and Neolithic artworks that were using these spirals. And I wondered if, and so it kind of struck me. I was like, wow, that is Scotch broom and it's very Scottish. It's very, not that that was Scottish, it's more like Celtic or pre, like Neolithic kind of stuff. But I wondered if you often used circles or spirals or something like that in your forms.
Well, it's really, it's of the moment, like what is inspiring me as I work through process as well. So at that moment, like before I found all the Scotch broom, I had been gathering like the redwood branches that had fallen that were curvy, and I kind of made this vortex on the ground. And of course, everything burned up in the fire. But I kind of went on a roll with the revolutions for a while. I still had been creating them. They transformed a little bit more, adding beading, which I had incorporated after the online beading class during the pandemic. But yeah, it mainly, I'd say that mostly this one series is rounder. And yeah, it depends on where I'm at with my sculpture at the time being. So usually I incorporate some kind of nature, or I do incorporate a lot of trees. When they took down a tree, I created a series, Nature Fights Back, from almost the entire tree because I'm in the city. So, but yeah, there is some circles in there too. And I usually incorporate some secondhand materials beyond that to connect them to. But cool, thanks for asking.
I have a question about the process. Oh, Rhonda has her hand up. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a question of Lorraine. You went from the cyanobacteria to the plants. Is there a continuation of your story or your poem? What happens after plants?
Am I still? Oh, okay. Well, plants. I don't know that there's anything. I mean, they're plants. I mean, plants are the foundation of all of the life that we have right now. I mean, the sun gives life to the plants, and the plants give life to everything else. Everything, either eats the plants or eats someone who eats plants, and everyone, because we all die, everyone who dies goes back to feed the plants. So, I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure that there is anything that goes on after the plants, except the rest of us. We all go after the plants.
I kind of meant it like in the philosophical context as well as the biological realm. So, like, where would you take it next? Where would you like to see it go?
It's a circle. It's complete. I don't know. I don't know where it would go. I mean, I'm sorry. There's. I understand
what kind of an abstract question.
So there's plants. The plants evolved. They started out as little stubby things, and then they started developing flowers and covered seeds, and grew all over the planet. And then there were extinction events, and they were reduced down to little stubbly things, and then they grew up some more, and some of them died and made big coal fields that burned up like crazy at the end Permian extinction. And then they came back, and then they fed the dinosaurs, and then that extinction happened, and they went back to being little stubbly things again, and then they came back again, and they're nice now. Look at them, they're beautiful. They're just the most gorgeous things we have. They're just so important and so beautiful. And then they make flowers, for Pete's sake. And flowers are like, God, they're just wonderful. And flowers and pollinators, and I'm sorry, it's just, they just are, plants, they just are, and
Mhm.
we'd be dead without them. I mean, if all the plants decided to get up and migrate to another planet, we would not last a week,
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to throw a question in, and then Carol has her hand raised again. I'm curious for some of you who haven't spoken yet about the ideas of collaboration. Some of you have worked with collaborators and science collaborations, and whether that's part of your practice or not. Just one of you who hasn't spoken yet. Anybody who'd like to talk? Okay, well then, Carol, go ahead.
Oh, I have just a question for Emily. And I really appreciated what you said about the thought process in the watercolor and your ambitions for that. And I wondered, I guess what I liked was that you were presenting a question, which I think is often sometimes more effective when you're talking about ecological, kind of missions and stuff to maybe not necessarily complain or give answers, but to kind of put the responsibility into the viewer. And I wondered, and I really appreciated that about what you made. And I wondered if you've thought about or worked with the form of the question more often than just this piece. And if not, I would encourage you to, but I would like to hear more about that, I guess.
That's funny. I was journaling about another question, and I thought about incorporating that question into another painting around I'm blinking now, but the idea of a just transition, like, is that possible? I know a lot of people talk about that, and like, what does that even mean? And is that, what does that look like, and how is that possible? But yeah, I was kind of meditating on, like, just the idea of the question, and keeping things more open-ended. Especially, I think I'm very drawn to abstract work, and I think some conversations I've had are, what do you want people to get out of your paintings? And I don't exactly know. So having a question feels a little safer for me to just like throw it out there.
Yeah, I think a lot of my past work was more very abstract installation, and I found that titling it in more of a narrative form helped frame it for viewers in a way that was satisfying for me, where it wasn't necessarily attached to the piece in text, but it was there as kind of posing a longer, kind of position or something to the work. But yeah, I would encourage you to do that more. I really liked it.
Oh, well, thanks for that feedback.
Okay, Laura, is it Lorraine?
Yeah, I just want to, the word collaboration kind of triggered something for me, because I'm still puzzling over this question about the plants, and maybe it wasn't clear at the end, because I was really trying to keep everything within the 3 minutes. But when the cyanobacter went in and joined with another eukaryotic cell, that is a cell that has a separate nucleus, a cell that didn't make its own food, the cyanobacter began to generate oxygen based on the food that the other cell was bringing in, and they formed a collaboration, in which the cyanobacteria stopped being a cyanobacteria because it was now an integral part of another cell, and we call them now chloroplasts. So the chloroplasts that do this photosynthesis for the plant cell were originally these cyanobacteria, and they collaborated in much the same way that the mitochondria had also formed collaborative processes with these larger cell that they became a part of, which then they became part of all of the cells. Or, you know, and I think probably one of these days the people who are mucking around with cellular biology are going to find a way to implant all of us with chloroplasts and eventually nitrogen fixing bacteria, and then we won't have to grow food. We'll just, you know, be plants ourselves, you know, and nitrogen fixing plants at the same time, you know. There was a great quote that I came across as I was doing this research by this woman biologist, and let's see if I can find it. No, can't find it. I wrote it down. Oh, wait, here it is. This is a biologist named Lynn Margulis. She said, life did not take over the globe by combat, but by networking. That's what a lot of us are talking about, how to work together with each other and with the plants and the animals and the air and the ocean and the soil and the mountains and the clouds and the atmosphere. All of those things working collaboratively, which is really how nature pretty much works, and how our bodies work. I mean, you know, if we could work with one another the way our liver and heart and skin and bones work together, we'd have a pretty nice society.
Well, on that very inspirational note, I think it's time to finish up, and thank you all for participating. And maybe this, maybe some of you can have ways to reconnect and form networks with other artists who are in this show, form your own new set of mycelium. So I'd just like to say a couple more words about WEED. As I said, we're a volunteer organization. We're always looking for new ideas. We now have this online exhibition platform. So if one of you members would be interested in helping organize an exhibition, we're now looking at the times when we don't have the membership show to have other shows, and then also spaces, physical spaces that can be in collaboration with an online exhibition. So we'd love input if you come across a space that's interested, or you have an idea for an exhibition. And it goes through a board process of 13 independent and women, and then it goes to exhibition committee, and then whoever would do it would be part of the exhibition committee to help bring forth the exhibit. So with that, I think we will close, and thank you all very much. Thank Christina and Lauren for doing the hard work, and Christina for organizing everybody to come, and thank you all for coming. And I think we'll bid farewell and finish the recording. So you're welcome to stay on afterwards and chat if you want.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you,
Christina.
Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Lauren. Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.